Short Game. This is the show where we discuss short video games. Really good ones. Games that you can pick up and get a great experience out of in an evening or a weekend. The kind of games that I love to play and that I hope you'll love to play too. We feature one great game per week, and this week we're talking about a fantastic game that I played earlier this year, Octodad Dadliest Catch. But before we discuss that, I'll introduce my co-hosts. With me today is Shane Kelly, my twin brother.
That's me. How's it going?
Pretty good. And of course, I am Reagan Kelly. And also joined by the sexiest podcaster alive, Nate Heininger.
Hello, everybody.
Wow, did you hear that?
Yeah, that was quite the ringing endorsement.
Whew, that was something.
Yeah.
I got to take a sip of my water. All right. So before we start the show, before we dive into talking about Octodad, which is just a really neat little game, and it is a little game, so this is a true short game, a game that you can truly enjoy in an evening. Before we dive into Octodad, is that a pun? It kind of is, isn't it?
Octodad. Well, I assumed that the title was a pun on the Octomom.
Yeah. You know, I think that it is, but it's more than that. Yeah, it came out. Well, okay, we'll talk about this in a few minutes.
We'll talk more about the put a pin in the Octomom. We'll circle back around to the Octomom.
Slap Octomom up on the on the note board, and we'll come back to it. But before we dive into talking about Octomom/Dad, what's everybody playing? What's keeping you occupied?
Well, I have been kind of vacillating a little bit. I've been switching back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
I've got 3 games that I'm in the process of starting and can't commit to any of them. So one of them I've played with you, Reagan. That's Mercenary Kings. I think it was you, Nate, that turned me onto it.
Yep.
Yeah, we talked very briefly about that in a recent episode.
Absolutely. And oh my gosh, I'm starting to really get into this game. So just for the folks at home, just my take on it as having played it for a little while is it's like a cross between Diablo and Metal Slug. And
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, it's at least in terms of the gameplay, it's got a very strong kind of twitchy platform element. The platforming is very precise. It has a high difficulty curve on that part of it. I think just getting started in that game, I died a whole lot, just tons and tons.
It can be difficult. Absolutely. There's a mission really early on where you're fighting a boss type character, and I've been playing the game with my girlfriend a lot on the PS4, and it took us several attempts to complete that mission.
Yeah, I think I may still be working on that one. And I tried playing it with my wife, and she played it for about 15 minutes and says, "This is too hard. I hate it."
Bummer.
Yeah, and she's not a gaming slouch, but it's maybe not for everybody. But I am very much enjoying it. And despite kind of the really awful difficulty curve, I haven't really gotten into many of the crafting elements of it. I've kind of built up a little bit of a gun. If you've gotten a little farther into it, Nate, like how much is there to the game?
Well, I'm not that far into it. I've completed, I think, the first run of missions. There's as you complete missions, you open up new rankings and open up new missions, and you can kind of skip through them and move up rankings faster. But I've been kind of doing the completionist and playing every mission, and I've just completed all of the first round, and I've got a pretty good weapon, I think. But they kind of hold you back because it's built on random drops, and the better weapons require certain random drops that I haven't found yet. So I just assume that they start dropping in deeper and deeper into the game. But it has been kind of fun. Like I made a pistol with kind of an assault scope on it, and Molly, my girlfriend, had something kind of similar, but she did it for different stock, so it's a little more accurate, and it's been a lot of fun, but it's definitely hard. I will say you do get better, and you start to kind of learn the levels too.
Yeah, that's the thing. It seems like it's a lot of the missions take place in the same level and the same terrain, and so you just get better navigating around.
Yeah.
The platforming elements of it were really brutal. Like I wound up spending all of my money on adrenaline shots to revive myself after I died. I mean, it's a pretty interesting game. I really like it. Thanks for turning me on to it. And it kind of came at the same time as I spotted Metal Slug 3 on sale.
Oh yeah. I bought that on sale and I haven't even opened it yet. I haven't even installed it.
I bought that for you and you haven't installed it yet.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I just became a completely ungrateful. That was actually a really funny situation because I literally had my iPad turned on with Steam open and I was like hovering over the buy button when I got a text from you, Shane, that said, "I just bought us Metal Slug." I was like, "Oh, well, I just saved $350."
Oh, glad I could save you that $350. So
Yeah.
go ahead and install that game.
I
so
will.
We can try it
It's
out.
cool. I spent that $350 on a mini Blizzard, and I enjoyed that very much. So we're good.
From Dairy Queen?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that says something about the current gaming industry.
I know.
Yeah.
It really does. I mean, Metal Slug 3, right? A classic, brilliant game from the Neo Geo.
And not only that, it's been upgraded with online play, and it's a very nice port.
Which is insane. You can play this classic Neo Geo game against a friend on the internet. We are living in a truly magical age. $350.
Yep. I'll get a Blizzard. That's what I think a lot of about that with mobile gaming, iPad, iPhone, and whatnot. When people will be like, "Ugh, I'm not paying $1 for that."
99
like,
cents for
"Ooh,
a game.
soda," and you go and get a soda for like $1.80. It's like, oh yeah, that was worth my money.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
Then again, I will say that some of those mobile games, I would enjoy a Blizzard more and for longer.
Well, and that's fair. You know, there is definitely some quality issues, and you really do feel like you wasted money when you buy a crappy game.
Mm-hmm.
But still, I buy, like Reagan said, like a Blizzard, and that's like 3 games that I could buy.
You know what I think would
Yeah.
really solve this problem? Something I was thinking about the other day.
Don't say microtransactions, because I will beat the shit out of you.
No. I think there's a quality control problem and a pricing problem in mobile games, but also in not even just in video games in general, or even almost in things in general. You know what would be better? You know how we could fix this issue? Don't let the game publishers price their games. Let the game critics price their games.
Huh.
You know, if I publish a shitty mobile game and it's crap, let a quorum of Metacritic raters price it at 99 cents. But if I make Threes, the most inventive, my opinion, most inventive mobile game of early 2014, and I put that out on the App Store, let the critics say this game deserves a $18.99 price tag.
But then no one would buy it, and no one would get to enjoy it.
No, they
So
would, because
you
then price and quality
You're-
would be integrated.
your Metacritic cabal has just defeated itself, Darth. So the third game I'm trying to decide between is... Have you guys heard about this game, Child of Light?
Yes, I have. I read a really interesting
Yes,
article at Polygon about it.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
that's available on the PS4.
Yeah, I have
And
just been looking at it today, and I find it pretty intriguing. What have you heard about it?
Well, what I read about it was that, first of all, it's made by Ubisoft.
Yes.
Using their UbiArt engine, which was the same engine they used for the new Rayman Legends game, or which is the newer one, Rayman Legend or Rayman Origins? I think Rayman Legends. Anyway, it's their new engine for 2D platformers, and apparently now also for RPGs or other 2D games. But what I think is really fascinating about it is that it sort of represents the moment, sort of tipping point kind of moment, where it looks like large game publishers and large game producers are starting to sort of take on the indie gaming aesthetic. If you looked at this game and you didn't see the Ubisoft, nameplate on it, you could easily think that this game was a small budget indie game. It looks like it's kind of made with that kind of love. It looks like it's on a small scale. It's 2-dimensional. It's available on a variety of platforms. It's got all the hallmarks of an indie game, but it is a major label, big publisher game. And I think it's really interesting to start seeing that happen, because I think the big publishers are noticing what's happening in the indie game space and are starting to target the people like me, I guess, that love that aesthetic and that gameplay style. It's not exactly a style, but you know what I mean. That sort of the appeal of indie games. It comes from smaller, unique experiences that are maybe a little more experimental and have a little bit more, yeah, you get the idea.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I see what you're saying. It is a a kind of a cross gameplay. It is a platformer with elements of JRPGs, is what I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you see that specifically as like a targeting of. You think that indie games have a patent on the platform genre? I don't really know if that's the case.
Maybe not, but almost these days, right?
I think it's more just embracing the concept of a $15 game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Games with smaller scope.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to sound like I think that this game is in that way made inauthentic. I think it's probably made by people with the same drive and love of gaming as your average indie game. But I just think it's interesting that the indie game space has grown important enough that larger publishers are starting to seemingly kind of emulate the development style and the scope and whatnot of that indie gaming sort of scene.
Yeah, well, I think I'll probably check it out. I know it's out now.
Mm-hmm.
Sony's absolutely doing that. I mean, the PS4 has really been pretty awesome as far as the ability to play newer indie games.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to play Don't Starve on my PS4.
Oh, you've got to tell me all about that game, because I'm seriously considering checking it out, but I haven't actually played it yet. Not to mention, with the PS4, the game that we're talking about today, Octodad Dadliest, we'll talk about it. It's out on the PS4 as well.
Yeah, isn't that game Tribute or something like that? It's coming out from the people that made Bastion.
I think I saw that. Yeah,
that's coming.
Heard about that.
That's coming very soon for the PS4.
Wow.
I played Octodad on my computer using a PS4 controller, so it's kind of like the best of both worlds.
Awesome. Shane, if you come to a decision between those three games, please let us know. I'm curious.
Alrighty.
And I really want to hear about Child of Light, because it looks cool.
Yeah, it does look pretty interesting. I think I'm gonna give that one a whirl as soon as I get some time. Mercenary Kings keeps drawing me back in though, and I do love any game that since I know that you guys both have a copy of it, I'd be delighted to drop into a game of that with you guys.
Absolutely.
That would be really cool. When you play that game in person, because I've only played it over the internet with Shane so far. When you play it in person with the couch co-op, two people on the same screen, are you getting a split screen, or does it tie you together in some way?
Surprisingly, I was not expecting this when we started it. It's a split screen, and it's a vertical split screen.
Oh, so you're each getting like one half of the screen left and right?
I get left, and first player gets left, and second player gets right.
Huh.
It's more like a quarter of the screen as I've been playing it, because it divides the screen horizontally. The bottom half is each player's map.
Yep.
And the top half is each player's play area. So that's one of the complaints that I had about it, is that kind of left you with a very small amount of screen real estate. That said, because of the pixel art style and the kind of retro nature of the gameplay, I didn't find it to be that big of a hindrance.
Yeah, I thought it was fine. It was a little confusing at first, because especially I was going in expecting it to be something where we were going to kind of share the same space, as you were saying, and kind of move through these levels together. In reality, we actually have spent very little time together, because the maps are broad and there's a lot of different ins and outs and directions that you can go.
Yeah.
So we actually... typically, unless it's against a boss or a particularly hard thing, we'll kind of split up in order to cover more ground.
I found when I was playing the game that I kept dying and getting separated from Shane, who I was playing with, which was a little frustrating.
It is very fast-paced. It's hard to stay together. So even when we would say, okay, let's move together, unless we were consciously working on it, like, okay, you go now. Okay, I've moved up. Okay, kill this guy. Unless we were like talking like that, you pretty much inevitably become split up.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would totally love to jump into a game of this with you two guys, so hopefully we'll get a chance to do that shortly here.
Definitely.
What about you, Nate? What are you playing?
Well, it's more like not playing. I talked about this in the last episode about MLB The Show. I know sports games can be very...
divisive.
Yeah, divisive. That's a good word for it. But as a massive baseball fan, I'm a fan of all things baseball, including the best baseball simulator, which is The Show. And it came out today. I know this will be listeners. This is, a couple weeks in the past, but
Yeah.
it includes a massive download to go with it.
So
And
you've
I don't
got
know,
a disc and it downloads something?
Well, actually, I bought it entirely online through PlayStation's online store, and that took maybe an hour to download. But then once I started up the game, it had another internal download, and it handled it very strangely because I was able to start the game, and one of the hallmarks of The Show is they have a very realistic, or as realistic as you can get for like a baseball video game, where you actually take control of one player, and it's almost like a baseball RPG, where instead of controlling the entire team, you control the one person and their path through the minors and the majors and all the things that come with that. And I was able to create my character entirely. The character creation is crazy. It's more than any other game I've ever seen with what you can do.
Can you be a Khajiit?
No, that's a good point. But I did make my standard character. His name is Romango. That's kind of my go-to character name.
First or last name? Is that on his jersey?
His name is just Romango, and so I had to make him Romango.
It's a mononym like Madonna.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it wouldn't allow me to not have a first name or not to leave one of them blank. So his name is Romango.
I think you missed an opportunity with his first name, but not being the Romango.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Next
I
time.
like Romango though too.
It's got a catch to it. I like it.
Yeah. And so I got entirely through that. Did all the character points. I mean, it's a lot like an RPG. Like how many points in stamina, how many points in all this, and go to play my first game, and it says required content not downloaded. And I just look in the top left corner, and there's a little tiny loading bar. And I'm at about 3 hours of downloading at this point, and it's still not done.
Jesus.
So I don't know if it's. I mean, this is a wildly popular game, and I'm sure that there are literally millions of people trying this right now. So maybe I'm just, kind of low on the list or whatever.
What will happen to Romango?
I know he's just out there in baseball. I don't know.
He's not getting called up to the majors.
No,
Sure.
certainly is not.
Can I ask you a question about that character creation process?
Sure.
I just listened to a show that had a long interview with a baseball recruiter, and
Okay.
he described the way he picked a player as he looks for a guy with the good face. So does Romango have the good face?
Romango has the great face,
Ooh.
big chops, handlebar mustache.
That's what you want in a baseball player.
Absolutely,
That's what you want, man.
Can you make
Absolutely.
Romango super fat?
You can, but Romango is not super fat.
Oh.
You can make them. I made him like more after. I don't normally model anything after myself whenever I'm doing things like this. I did make him roughly my size, and if I had muscle, what my muscle would, what my weight would be.
So essentially, you eliminated him from ever participating in the majors.
Essentially, yes. There are some guys out there about 5'10". If I had muscle, probably about 170, 175 or so.
If only.
If only.
I'll ask you a quick question about this because I only have a kind of a vague understanding of most sports games, and the thing that I've observed about sports games is there's a big division between simulation sports games and action sports games. Would you say that this game veers more towards simulating the game, or more towards playing the game as a sort of an action game?
I think it got popular for it being a simulator.
Mm-hmm.
It has some modes that you can turn on to make it more action-based, more because baseball, obviously everyone feels like it's a pretty slow sport.
Mm-hmm.
They have created some things called like quit count, quick count, which kind of speed the game up, where you can actually play an entire game against a friend of yours in like 20 minutes.
Finally.
Yeah. Now, for someone like myself, I actually don't like that because I want the full experience. But for somebody who's more of a passive baseball fan, I think it's perfect. But they really go all out to make this as true to the league as currently possible. There are other games like RBI Baseball that recently was reborn that is more of an action game where it's a little more cartoony and all about, hitting home runs and whatnot. And in football, there's like, if you guys remember the Blitz series, things like that. But the show is at its core a simulator.
I think, the show, but pretty much everything else that's out there right now is more towards that simulation-y side. And I think back on the only sports games I've ever truly enjoyed, which are mostly tennis. And there have been a couple of others, things like golf. And those were all games where you're playing a single individual character and the game is the game. There's no meta game about, can I hire the right players or can I manage the finances of my team?
I seem to remember you playing some kind of Mario tennis game that had an extremely intricate metagame.
Oh, holy effing crap. Mario Tennis Power Tour.
Yourself.
Yes, excuse me, guys. Mario Tennis Power Tour for the Game Boy Advance is the greatest sports game of all time, says the guy who has played essentially no sports games.
Yeah, well, I think tennis is a little different too because that's such a quick twitch motion game to begin with. Like, it just kind of holds up on its own. There's a lot of slow parts of real life sports, and so video games try to reduce as much of the waiting and the kind of slowness of live sports as possible.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm looking forward to your fully informed take on the show, and I hope Romango has a great first season.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Awesome.
Doing it for his family and his friends and for himself.
Well, I have been playing a couple of things recently. The game that I'm in the middle of at the moment is I have finally decided to fix the hole in my gaming knowledge and play Earthbound. Either of you guys played Earthbound?
No.
Wow.
I have not,
Okay,
actually.
well then this discussion is over. But I've finally decided to go back and play it. It's another one of those games that actually this is kind of a crazy situation. This is the third time, at least the third time that I've picked up Earthbound and tried to play it because it's one of those games that I always knew I should play Earthbound. And the very beginning of Earthbound, you are a child in your bed and you're woken up by a giant crash and you sneak out of your house and you find that there was a giant comet that hit the town near you. Later, of course, you find that this, contained an alien or something. But you're supposed to get to that comet. You sneak out of the house with the intention of checking out the comet. And the first, at least 2 times, maybe 3 times that I tried to play this game, I would get to the roadblock where the police have set up a roadblock that you can't get past to get to the comet. And you can't get past it. You can't get to the comet. And I would try and sneak around and try and find a way around. There was no way at all to get around this police roadblock. These were the most professional police I've ever seen in a video game. They were unescapable, and you could not get to the comet. And I, at that point, just figured, I don't know what I'm doing. But I don't like looking up a walkthrough during the first 10 minutes of a video game.
Absolutely.
It just feels wrong. So I had never actually gotten into the game, even though I installed it in an emulator on multiple different devices and I tried to get into the game. Every time I got stymied by this police roadblock. And I think actually probably 3 times. And this most recent time, I was like, okay, this time I can do it, man. I've really got some time. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to get into Earthbound. And I got out of bed and I walked down to the police roadblock and I looked around and same exact thing. Stuck, couldn't get past it. I decided, damn, I'm just never going to get past this. And I said, well, maybe I just need to explore the rest of the town. And out of just on a whim, I walked back to the character's house and went back to bed. Defeated. and then you get a psychic message from another character, and you wake up the next day, and then the roadblock is gone. And I was like, why didn't I figure that out in the, like, 3 times I've tried to play this game? So now I'm into the game, and it's absolutely fantastic. But it's just these little things. I should have just looked up a walkthrough day one and discovered that, oh, you're supposed to walk out to the roadblock, realize you can't get past it, and then go back to bed. What the crap is that?
Well, Nintendo expects people to respect bedtimes, Reagan. Nintendo doesn't want to give children the wrong idea about sleep habits.
Or respecting the police.
That's pretty funny. I try very, very hard to not ever look up walkthroughs, but I don't feel bad when I do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are certainly times where I've just been like, I don't feel like spending the time is going to take me to figure all this out, because I'm clearly a dum-dum and I'm straight up stuck and I need to get some help.
Should I be guilty about how much walkthrough or how much wiki information I used playing FTL?
Oh my.
I think there's a little bit different. I never looked up walkthrough, but reading forums and things like that for general strategy, I absolutely did that. But I think that's a little bit different when there's looking up strategy for a game that has a billion different play styles is different than looking up, walk through this door, look to your left, pick up this key.
Yeah.
That's like a walkthrough is different than a game like FTL.
Something that has made me feel a little more comfortable with the Earthbound situation is that I didn't know this when I had initially started playing the game, but I found out later that Earthbound was one of the few games that Nintendo published in America with the strategy guide in the box. There is
Interesting.
And it's a beautiful strategy guide. It came with every copy of the game that was originally published, and it's a beautiful example of weird 90s Nintendo publication. It's gorgeously illustrated, and it basically tells you everything you need to do in the game. But it does it in a way that doesn't make you feel like you're cheating. It's really well done. So I actually finally just downloaded a PDF of that, and now I'm cruising through the game and enjoying every minute. And I think, in a way, feeling kind of more authentic because I'm not looking it up just on, game facts. I'm looking it up in the original document that would have come in the box with the game, and it really is a great way to go.
The way the developers intended.
Mario would be proud.
Exactly. It's awesome. I also should mention that, as a bit of a side note, I'm playing the game this time, because I've played it on numerous different setups. I'm now playing the game on the best emulator console that I have ever had a chance to use, and I say this as somebody who essentially produced the. I won't go into it too deeply, but I've tried a lot of different options for running handheld emulator stuff. So I've relatively recently, purchased an NVIDIA Shield, which is. If you're not familiar with the NVIDIA Shield, it is about the size of a sort of an oversized Xbox controller with the same layout, but a nice 720p 5-inch screen built in, and a really top-of-the-line Android-based CPU in it. And it's got sort of 2 main features. One is that it is a fantastic toy for playing Android games on. So if you have a particular Android game that you want to play that would work well with a controller, it's great for those, but it's also fantastic for all the really excellent emulators that are out for Android. So I've been playing SNES games on it, Game Boy Advance games, and it's absolutely a terrific console for all of that with a beautiful touch screen that you can use. But in addition to that, it's also a great game for its sort of headline feature, game streaming, which is that if you have a gaming PC with an NVIDIA graphics card in it from the 600X series or later.
Nerd.
I know. I recognize that this is a game console that is going to appeal to a fairly small number of people because you sort of have to check off a lot of things on your checklist. You have to be basically me. But if you can check off, first of all, already own gaming PC, check. That gaming PC has an NVIDIA, I think it's a Keepler or whatever the spec graphics card in it. So one of the 600 or 700 or whatever newer series it is. Okay, check. Also, you like the kind of games that would work well on a handheld as well as on a desktop. I love all of the indie games, platformers, things like The Walking Dead, where you've got a little bit of a slower pace. It doesn't actually work that well for shooters because the screen is so small, the targets become incredibly small. But for me, the types of games that I play, check, works great on this. And also, you have a really good Wi-Fi router. Also, check for me. So if you can check all of those off, then this is an absolutely phenomenal experience. I could sit down at my computer and play a game, and then if I want, I can grab my shield, head up to my bed, and sit in my warm, comfortable bed and play the exact same game on a wonderful little handheld meant for PC game streaming. It's the kind of thing that when you first hear about it, you think that must be a shitty experience because the game streaming can't possibly work as well as they advertise. But it really does. It is an awesome thing. It's science fiction to be able to stream a game from your PC downstairs to your bed upstairs. It's absolutely awesome. So,
as much as it sounds like we are not sponsored by the NVIDIA Shield. Though if you're listening, NVIDIA...
Yeah, I'd love to. The check's in the mail, guys. The fix is in.
We would be happy to test your NVIDIA Shield 2 if and when you decide to create one, guys.
But, I mean, I like the idea, and it's true that when I first heard about this thing, I thought, God, that sounds completely useless. Like,
that's been a lot of people's reaction.
Yeah, I mean, that's still my reaction. But have it.
Well, screw you.
Well, but I will say this. So my gaming PC is not really a PC at all. My gaming PC is actually a 27-inch iMac, but which I dual boot over to Windows. And so I thought I was sitting high on my Mac user high horse saying, oh, I don't need to be able to use one of these devices. But just as you started talking so much about how much you were enjoying it, NVIDIA released an update to their driver for the graphics card that is in my iMac that would enable me to use one of these devices. The Shield. Mm-hmm. So, the 27-inch iMac I have has a NVIDIA GeForce GTX 780M with 4 gigabytes of graphics RAM, and it's a pretty decent GPU, but it's a mobile GPU in a desktop machine. So I did not think I'd be able to use this thing, but it turns out I can.
And they just dropped the price.
What does it actually cost?
So they initially, when they first launched it, cost I think either $300 or
Close the deal here.
I know, yeah, I'm bringing it home. So the NVIDIA Shield initially cost, I think it was either $300 or $350. When I bought it, it was $250, and that was on a short time sale.
But will you pay $350? No. Will you pay $250? No. Tell them what the final offer is.
They're going for $200 now, and I think for $200 they are a really great deal. For $200,
it's still more than I'm going to pay. I'm not going to drop $200 on this thing.
All right, you don't have to, and I'm not trying to sell anybody on it, but I just say that I have been having a really great time with it. It's really been great. And it means I've got a really excellent console to grab and take with me if I want to play Earthbound on the go or anything all the way up to, it'll even emulate Dreamcast games, which is crazy to me. Because it seems...
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, the Dreamcast, didn't it just come out like last year? Like, I've got a Dreamcast connected to my TV. But it'll emulate Dreamcast games. It'll emulate PlayStation 1. It'll emulate the PSP. It'll emulate the Nintendo DS, which it can actually do decently because it has a touchscreen. Kind of a weird thing, but it works. And I've just been super, super impressed with it, both for emulation and for game streaming. They're also really marketing it as a sort of a platform with Android-based games as kind of an alternative to the PS Vita or the Nintendo 3DS. That's a kind of a failure. There's a lot of decent games on Android, but most of them are not designed with a gamepad in mind, and those that are no good. Well, there's just a few that are okay, but it's not really worth buying for that. But as an emulator console and as a game streaming device, it is worth every penny. That's my story. All right, so I think we've put this off long enough. Do we want to talk about this really excellent game about a perfectly normal-looking guy?
Yeah, I don't really get it. I don't understand the name either. He's just a normal guy.
I don't either. There's not 8 of him. He's monodad, and he's just a single individual dad.
Hardworking.
I know. He has only 2 children, which I found confusing.
All right, so to explain the stupid joke that we've just been making, for those of you who may not have had a chance to experience Octodad yet, we will fire a spoiler horn for any later stuff. But to set up the game, Octodad is a action platformer puzzle game. I suppose that's sort of with a physics slapstick comedy bent.
Sure.
It's certainly all of those things, but maybe hard to describe in
puzzle. Puzzle only in that the controls are puzzling. There's no, there's very little.
It is indeed puzzling.
I think the hardest puzzle for me was mowing the lawn.
Yeah. Oh, that one I had an okay time with. I had some real difficulties with some of the other parts.
So the game features the title character, Octodad, who is, as described by the game, he is a loving father, a caring husband, a secret octopus. So you play Octodad, who is a bright orange octopus dressed up in the suit and tie of a loving father, who is trying to complete menial daily tasks around his house and elsewhere, while not revealing his octopus nature to his loving wife, 2 kids, and the other people around him, none of whom even suspect that he is a secret octopus.
There's actually, as far as game mechanics go, you have a little kind of bar that runs across the bottom, and as you do things that might give off the fact that you're an octopus, it starts to fill up, and so you have to really try your hardest not to be an octopus when you're walking around, or else you have to restart the level. It's the game's kind of version of dying.
Yeah, you cannot be revealed as an octopus.
That was an element of the game that I thought I would have loved to go farther with. This sort of bizarre take on a stealth game. Like, you know, I thought it would be excellent if they could have really solid snaked it up.
Yeah, there was, as the game moves on, there are a certain set of characters who really can tell that you might be an octopus. So,
well, let's start by talking a little bit about the history of the game, and then we'll talk about the specifics of the mechanics. Octodad started out... So actually, Octodad Dadliest Catch, the game that we're talking about today, is, in a sense, Octodad 2. There was a first game in the Octodad series, which was a freeware game released for Windows. It was actually,
I call it the Octoverse.
I hope that we get an octology out of it. But the first game...
Octoverse was better than Octology. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, don't worry. I just tend to edit out all of my unfunny jokes so that you guys sound less clever.
Fair enough.
With the very first game was made by a group of students at DePaul University. So it's really kind of an interesting story. There's a game design program at DePaul, and in an effort to kind of get attention for the game design program, some of the professors there arranged a sort of an internal school-wide game jam called the DePaul Game Experience, where some teams of students in their game design program created games, and they did a bunch of brainstorming and stuff, and created some games and sent the best one to compete in the student showcase at the Independent Games Festival. This was in 2011. And it's kind of an interesting story how the game came about. There's some great articles about these guys on the internet because they're really just an interesting new indie game company. But long story short, they did a bunch of sort of pressure cooker style game design meetings wherein the professors essentially locked them in a room and made them come up with game designs until they were completely out of ideas, and then made them throw all of those game designs away, and then did it again, and then did it again until they were also completely out of ideas, that they were coming up with ludicrous, dumb, bizarre ideas. And finally, Octodad came out of all of that.
That's really funny. I did not read that.
One of the quotes from one of the people involved was, once you get past Zelda but with guns, you really start to get into the weird sounding stuff. But any of it could be a game, and any of it could be very interesting. And I think that's a really great approach, because I think there are so many obvious games being made where it's, well, this is another game a lot like these other 5 games that I've played, but in this one, things are a different color, and also the characters have a different accent. It's just things can start feeling a little samey. But Octodad, particularly the first one, felt like nothing else out there.
I definitely love games that are difficult to describe to even a inveterate gamer. Like, this is a game that the concept. I told a friend about it today. As we were chit chatting about what we were doing today, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm doing a podcast about a game called Octodad. It's a game where you are an octopus in a suit, and you're raising children." And he was like, "What?" So it's just it's a great game because it's
impossible
out
to
there.
describe. It's a physics puzzle. It's a fatherhood simulator.
Yeah, gameplay wise, I don't even really care about it, but I think the gameplay of it is interesting. But the thing that really made it work for me was just that how the story of the game and the kind of idea, the out there idea of the game, and the cartoonish art style of the game just all kind of came together to make a whole that was really kind of, as weird as it was, you could kind of jump right into it and really just go for it.
Felt so much to me like a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Is like that it had that kind of it felt like a weird episode of SpongeBob or something like that. You know what I mean?
You know what it reminded me of most was Animaniacs, and more specifically their segment
Chicken Boo!
Chicken Boo!
Chicken Boo! Yes, it was. It does remind me of Chicken Boo.
He wears a disguise to dress like human guys, but you're not a man, you're a chicken boo. Oh my god, I loved Chicken Boo. And it's essentially Chicken Boo the video game, but with an octopus. And what's wonderful about it is that the bizarre physics of the game, most of the comedy of the game comes not just out of its bizarre scenario, but also out of how your goal in the game is to act like a person, but they give you all these bizarre constraints on the controls and the physics that make it really, really difficult to act like a person. And so the physics are constantly going mad, and your legs are flying out from under you, and you're knocking over objects, and so
there's banana peels everywhere.
Yeah, so it is 100% a slapstick.
They did not
cartoon.
need to include those banana peels. That was just cruel.
Totally uncalled for.
Yeah,
I mean, you're tripping all over yourself just trying to keep on four weird octopus legs.
So I feel like we should explain the controls of the game at this point, because that's the crux of the entire thing.
Did anybody here? Any of you guys play it with anything other than a gamepad? Did you play with a mouse and keyboard?
No, and I can't imagine how.
I did not. I know that this actually, they give you a really good selection of options for how to play this game. So first of all, you can play it with almost any gamepad you can connect to your computer. So you can connect a PS4 controller, a PS3 controller, or an Xbox 360 controller, and your computer will recognize it, and it will give you a good optimized experience. They did a great job of supporting gamepads, but you can also play the game with a mouse and keyboard. I have not played it with a mouse and keyboard, and I think the general consensus is it's pretty well designed for a gamepad.
Yeah, I can't imagine how it's played with a mouse and keyboard, though I'm sure they made it, possible. But I played it with a PS4 controller. Mm-hmm. What did you guys use?
I used a Logitech controller that's very much like a Xbox controller, but with a layout kind of similar to PS3 controller.
I use the same. I've got that nice Logitech controller, which is great for
nice
PC
controller.
Games. But go ahead.
Did you guys play QWOP? KWOP?
I think you mean QWOP.
Did I say
I did not play that.
QWOP?
Mm-hmm.
I have heard of this game, and it's a running simulator. Am I correct?
Right. Well, all this stuff we've been saying, it's a RPG, all that stuff, I think is giving it, to me, it's QWOP with a story.
Yeah.
The entire basis of the game, well, it's funny, it's kind of uniquely designed. It's all about how difficult it is to do anything. Mm-hmm. You control your octopus, he's upright for most of the time, and nothing moves separately. You control each limb individually. And they put you in things that would be very simple in most RPGs, like climbing stairs or picking up an item or going up a ladder. But the fact that you have to, on the PS4 controller, you hold the right trigger, and that allows you to have control of the right leg. And you have your two thumbsticks that you have to move, one moving it kind of vertical and down, and the other one kind of moving it in kind of a 360-degree circle. And he's a little suction. It's an octopus, so it kind of has a little bit of a suction cup aspect to it. But it's so difficult just doing anything other than running straight in a straight line.
I would kind of liken it to, it's as if you were trying to control a marionette made to be controlled by two people, but you're controlling it all by yourself. It's
so difficult.
Yeah, but actually it's bizarre how like it does become easier, but it's always just a hair away from slipping out of your control and having something bizarre happen, having Octodad fly off in a weird direction or knocking over an object. So
that's the great thing about it, is that the world is full of just fragile bottles and shelves of fine china and
piles of groceries.
Yeah, and they're all lined up right at the end of a place you have to run through. That's a fun element. It's
and
like
again, you're trying
chaos.
to prove that you're not an octopus.
Yeah.
So if you're knocking too much stuff over, people start to notice that guy might be an octopus.
But they do give you a surprising benefit of the doubt.
Yeah,
yes, they do.
But there were times when I was just stuck and straight out frustrated. Not even like, this is fun, I'm enjoying this, just like, I cannot get up this stupid ladder. I had to put it down for a second and be like, I don't know if I'm having fun right now. But I will say I played it in 2 sittings, one each of about an hour and 15 minutes or so. And after my first time playing it, when I was having some real difficulty with it, the second run through, I actually flew right through a lot of stuff, and I had a much better, I don't know if something finally clicked, but I had a real difficult time with this game to start with.
Mm-hmm. I think it does come down to, and you compared it to Quap, and I would also compare it to Surgeon Simulator. I don't know if you've played that game, but that's another game where essentially the controls, or rather your lack of really good control, kind of makes the game. It both provides the humor of the game and also the challenge of the game. Nothing in this game would be at all hard if you were playing as, I don't know, one of the dudes from Assassin's Creed. This is a game where a lot of the humor and a lot of the tension and everything about the game comes from how crummy and bizarre the controls are. You're constantly working against them, but that can become a really fun aspect of it.
And it's funny though, because it's not that the controls are bad. They're actually extremely precise. They just give you too much control over too small and too specific a movement. So
yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you find yourself like swinging around trying to get your one leg up on the next step, and your whole body's flailing around, and you're the one who's controlling it.
Mm-hmm.
There's only a couple times when there's other things. There's like, you're on a boat at one point and it's swaying, and that just makes things more difficult. But for the most part, you are the one flailing about. You are in complete control of the entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're attempting to be in complete control.
Mm-hmm. And what I think is really interesting about this is that I think, like some other games that I think use these control scheme as sort of center stage, like, for example, we talked a little bit about Thomas Was Alone and how all of the traits of all of the characters were kind of tied to their personalities. Well, if Octodad has a single defining personality trait, it is that he's not comfortable in his own skin. He, by definition, doesn't want to be found out for the octopus that he is. And that discomfort, really, you feel it in the controls. Octodad is not comfortable in the suit. and he is not comfortable climbing the stairs, and he is not comfortable making his way through the amusements in the aquarium, and you aren't comfortable either because you can't really quite make him do what he obviously wants to do. So I think actually that is a really clever aspect of the game. It's just really built to make you feel the frustration of, it sounds a little corny, feel the octopus, but you really feel the octopus in this game.
You really feel the octopus.
So to go back to talking about the Young Horses, that's the name of the company that produced this game. This game was the product of a Kickstarter project that followed that initial success. So they made their first Octodad game.
Have we played any games that were not product of a Kickstarter campaign?
That is a great question. Actually, Thomas Was Alone was not the product of a Kickstarter campaign.
Oh, okay.
But he had an Indiegogo campaign.
Oh,
well, yeah, it's the same thing then.
But Young Horses started a Kickstarter campaign to fund Octodad 2, as it was then called. And they all graduated from college, as far as I know, and most of them actually got regular day jobs. But they wanted so badly to sort of keep the team together and create something commercial and successful out of this Octodad game that they created their company, Young Horses, and they moved in together in a house, and they started doing things like pooling grocery money, so that two members of their fairly large team were able to leave their full-time jobs and work full-time on the game, while the rest of them worked part-time on the game and funded its development. So they took the Kickstarter campaign and mostly put that into business expenses and sort of funneled or lent their own money to the company in order to fund the development of the game. There's a really great article that I'll put a link to in the show notes, sort of profiling them about midway through their development process. And you really feel the tension of this tiny games company trying to get their first great product out. But their Kickstarter project was a big success, and then they spent 2 years following that making the game. It was released this January. And so far as we can tell, it's been a big success. They sold more units than they intended to, than they had hoped to. I think it sold 90,000 copies, and that's before the PS4 launch. So the game's now out on PS4. I have no idea how many copies it's sold since that time.
Nate, you're a PS4 gamer. Is this right up the alley of PS4 owners? Are they clamoring for a octopus fatherhood simulator?
I have no idea what the general PS4 gamer is looking for. I don't know who this game is being marketed to, but I'm glad to see it get such wide release.
Could it be targeted at secret octopi?
I bet there's some people who are playing
us?
this game and they feel like they can really relate to Octodad, I'm sure.
I think there's some real opportunity there for Octodad 3.
Octotunity?
Excuse me.
Octopunity.
Well, perhaps Octodad 3 could be you controlling Octodad using a PS4 controller to play Octodad 2.
Oh, God.
Uh-oh.
So...
that said, I honestly would sign in for Octodad 3 or for Octodad some other pun subtitle. Octodad meets Octomom, something like that.
I would most assuredly buy Octodad 3. I would buy it day one, but I bought Octodad 2 day one. Octodad 2 or Octodad Dadliest Catch had a trailer out before the game came out. That was, I think, the single best piece of video game marketing I've ever seen. Have you guys seen the trailer for Octodad? Did you see it before I browbeat you into playing the game?
Yes.
So
And I thought it looked hilarious.
it is. So we'll be putting a link to that, of course, in the show notes as well. And its primary feature is the excellent Octodad theme song, which is entitled Octodad, Nobody Suspects a Thing. I'll be dropping that right into the show right now.
Who's that man with the three-piece suit? Making a doll with the log and fruit. Who's that man with the 8 strong legs? Tried to make me breakfast, but it broke my eggs. Nobody suspects a thing. Watch out, Octodad. The Joker's in hot pursuit in a speedboat, and there's a chef with them, and they're gonna make sushi out of the Octodad. Run for your life. Spraying in his face.
Nobody suspects a thing. Octodad.
You know, if we all try to sing on Skype, we get quite out of sync. It's pretty bizarre. So, Octodad has this fantastic trailer featuring that great game, that great theme song, excuse me, and also kind of hinting at the story, which isn't much of a story, but was enough to draw me in. It is at least the story of a fun cartoon. And so I was 100% sold on Octodad from the moment I saw that trailer. And I bought the game on day one immediately. It hit Steam, and I think I bought it within hours. And then I immediately jumped into the game, and I had finished the game. I was truly into it. And I think I'd finished the game before I even ever exited it to the desktop. I think I completed it in about 2.5 hours that afternoon. So truly a short game.
Oh yeah, this is. If we could find 1,000 games this length, we could make this show forever.
It'd be daily. But the game has a story, which I actually thought was a bit endearing. Did you guys find the characters and story to do anything for you?
Yeah, it was cute. You know, it's all built around him, you know, masking the fact that he's an octopus.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the story is the wife kind of questioning his intentions and his daily motives.
Mm-hmm.
And he also, you know, we haven't said this yet, he doesn't actually speak. He just gurgles, and everything has subtitles, and the gurgles will be subtitles as like he gurgles questioningly, and everybody responds to it as if he's saying something in English. And
It's like insistent blub,
yeah,
furious
the
blub.
blurbs, yeah. And there's really not that many characters. I mean, there's the wife, the 2 daughters, or the daughter and the son, the main bad guy,
The chef,
and then
Fujimoto.
you know, yeah, there's some, you know,
some side characters.
tertiary, like, you know, filler characters that actually have some really funny jokes.
I liked the wife because I liked her kind of suspicions of him. It was cool that, you know, she seemed to be onto him, but she was still loved him. She didn't know what was up. That was kind of a cute character.
And I very much liked that this game actually told the story of their relationship. The first Octodad game, its plot was very simple. Essentially, you were Octodad, you spent the entire time in the house, and you were trying... much of the game was involved in trying to create a mannequin that you could put in your place so that you could escape into the basement to do something secretive. And it wasn't entirely clear what. I never actually played Octodad.
They still haven't...
I played a bit
Well,
of
they
it.
did talk quite a bit about the basement in this game, but they did not explain what's going on in the basement.
That's
to my
a good
satisfaction.
Yeah, it kind of
point.
came off as it's probably really like wet down there, and it's like
He likes
very
to just
much-
go and lay in the wet.
yeah, like an octopus habitat is down in the basement, It's kind of what I...
There now, as silly as it is to say that this game leaves me with unanswered questions, there were two actually. One was, what's he doing in the basement, and the other was, what the heck is this war that Chef Fujimoto keeps talking about?
That was an interesting question. So we see a lot of flashbacks in the game. It's in fact told out of sequence.
He's like, I mean, do we want to sound the spoiler horn such as it is for this 3-hour game?
It's not even 3. I feel a little silly. Really,
I took 3 hours and 11 minutes to finish it. I did finish it in one sitting, but I feel almost embarrassed at my gaming skill that it took me 3 hours to complete this game. I think a good solid hour of that was trying to climb that weird play structure at the aquarium.
Oh, geez.
at least. That was the most difficult part.
Actually, I managed to scale that pretty quickly. I think my most frustrating scene was the final scene, which we'll talk about in a minute. But here, I will go ahead and fire off the spoiler break. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is your spoiler break.
But I was gonna say this is an interesting game.
How so?
Very cute.
Yeah, I think it could easily be, like, if it weren't quite so frustrating, I think it could easily be a kid's game. But I don't think I would hand this to a kid because I think they would never, ever, ever, ever be able to complete it.
I think they're trying to sell it to kids. I think they want it to be. I think they want kids to play it. Hence the Minecraft thing they dropped in there.
Oh, yeah, that was a neat reference. I forgot about that.
You know, and I thought it was very much designed for kids. I think a kid would probably enjoy this game. They would take longer to play it because they would wreck they would just leave complete havoc in their wake.
Yeah.
You know, but
actually, I like to think that I'm better at video games than children are, but that's probably not true.
No, probably not.
So honestly, a kid would probably blow through this game faster than I did.
Oh, they'd figure out some trick where it's like, oh, well, you know, if you lift up the octopus's left leg and you hook it over the lamppost at the first level of the game, you can rocket ship yourself right to the end and kill Fujimoto with an axe right at the beginning.
Oh man, why didn't I figure that out? Yeah, I actually think that it is a great game to play with kids. This is the kind of game that I almost wished, as I was playing through it, that I had a child that I could play the game with. Because it has that great co-op mode.
Well, yeah, actually, it had co-op. Yeah, that would be good with a kid.
It would be great with a kid because one person can control the legs and the other person can control the arm. And actually, I think almost in some ways, it might be easier that way.
Yeah, maybe in the second game they could have Octodad be revealed as two octopuses in the same outfit.
Well, in the most recent update, they added multi-dad mode, where you can play through the game with multiple Octodads in different colored suits.
Well, ain't that something?
Uh-huh. So it's all local, so you'd have to get. But what was really amusing about it was that they added support for, I think it was up to 64 dads at a time. And if you play that in co-op mode, you could have up to 128 players playing the 64 Octodads simultaneously on screen. You'd need a hell of a USB hub and a bunch of peripherals, but it'll support it. Which sounds like absolute pandemonium as far as I can tell.
Hopefully there's videos of people doing this on YouTube.
Unfortunately, I haven't found anything yet, but I haven't really gone and searched. If I find one, I'll drop something into the show notes. Editor's note. Yeah, it turns out that the whole multi-dad mode thing was an April Fool's joke. It was on their website where I saw it actually a month after April Fool's and didn't put the dates together. Pretty funny, and there's a great video on there if you want to check it out. They also, at the same time, or maybe as a part of a previous update, tweaked some of the difficulty. So when I played the game, there were a lot of stealth sequences that actually apparently got toned down and changed and retooled a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't find that there was very many stealth sequences at all as I played through it. Like, there was only one situation where I really had to actively avoid detection through the entire game.
I had some real difficulty getting past some of the marine biologists and they had an eagle eye, and they would spot you if you weren't completely concealed during certain parts of the game. So there were whole parts of the game where I had to solid snake it and get underneath a like a box or other thing and crawl very carefully without tipping the box over and revealing myself. I don't know if that was kept in the version that toned down the stealth elements.
No, I didn't have to do that one time.
Yeah, that was one of the hardest segments in the game. It was right at the entrance to the aquarium. And there were at least 2 or 3 segments where there'd be a bunch of marine biologists standing around, looking around, and they'd look left to right. And in order to get past them at all, you needed to be completely concealed. It was very difficult.
Yeah, I think I might have... The only place that I had trouble was also right at the entrance to the aquarium with some marine biologists. But I just looked in a dumpster and located a employee's uniform to put on and just walked right past them.
Oh, I don't think that existed when I played through the game. I know they retooled that sequence and a few others based on some customer feedback. So, when we left off before you left for a sec there, Nate, we were talking a little bit about the story of the game, such as it is. It's not a deep story. It's about the same level as your average Saturday morning cartoon, but it does have some charm, and I'd like to talk just a little bit about the story, because I will say that the story actually kept me moving through the game. I found myself stuck a couple of times, and when I got stuck, what made me want to get unstuck was the characters in the story. I wanted to see how it concluded and how the characters were going to react when Octodad was inevitably revealed for the octopus that he was. So to kind of set it up, we talked a little bit a moment ago about how the game, the first Octodad game, really didn't have much of a plot. And it left you with a lot of questions, like, for example, how did Octodad and his wife meet? His wife Scarlet, or how on earth did they get married, or why is this Chef Fujimoto so murderous? Why does he want to kill poor Octodad? So we get answers to all of those questions in this game, but it's told in this out-of-sequence storytelling style. The very first scene is Octodad and Scarlet's wedding, and so your sort of tutorial level is getting dressed for the wedding, putting on your bow tie, getting prepared, and then walking down the aisle.
I love the very first shot of that game because you've got this octopus and he's like wearing like a tuxedo shirt, and someone opens the door and sees him, and he says, "Oh my God, you're not even dressed."
That was phenomenal. And so, of course, you have to get yourself all prepared for the wedding and then walk down the aisle. And then you get married to perhaps video gaming's most understanding wife, Scarlet.
She's gotta be understanding because she is dumb as a post.
Oh, come on. She's
Shane, she's looking...
Nobody can tell that Octodad isn't a regular dad. You can't say she's stupid. Everyone is stupid.
They're
only the one guy and the microbiologist, which I feel like it's safe to talk about them.
Yeah, the marine biologists.
Or I'm sorry, marine biologists, because they know a fish when they see a fish.
Yeah. In the aquarium, there's all these posters of the marine biologists with that phrase, "We know a fish when we see one." So the game is told through primarily a series of flashbacks. You get to see how Octodad and Scarlet met. Octodad crawls onto a sea-going vessel during a storm, and Scarlet is a reporter reporting on something going on the ship. And Fujimoto, the evil chef who wants to cook and eat Octodad, is the ship's cook and the only one who recognizes Octodad for the octopus that he secretly is.
It seems to me that there's a deep backstory implied to the Octoverse. by Chef Fujimoto's character. Now, I'm going to riff a little bit here, but I'm pretty sure that this game takes place in the aftermath of some kind of octopus-human war, where the octopi were
or cod
wiped out. Or cod? What about cod?
I don't know. They're talking about the chef goes into a whole thing about cod at one point and how they wiped out all the cod.
Maybe that's what started the war.
Perhaps.
Definitely, that's it. So after the octopi wiped out all the cod, humanity went to war on them, and Chef Fujimoto was the greatest general of that war.
In a sense, you could see this as a post-apocalyptic comedy drama.
Oh yeah, post-octolypt.
Oh Jesus!
It's a little late, guys. We need to start wrapping this up.
Yeah.
There have not been nearly enough octopus puns in this episode, though. I'll give you that.
I agree. We need at least 8 times this many.
But the main, like, besides all the flashbacks, it's a lot of just day-to-day stuff. You wake up and you have to go into the kitchen and make coffee for yourself, and then make lunch for your kids, and then mow the lawn and weed the garden. And then your wife wants everyone to go to the aquarium.
Which is a horrible idea, because, of course, this will...
Yeah. You really don't want to go to the aquarium, and so they kind of trick you, and you go to the grocery store where you have to do simple stuff like get frozen pizza and chocolate milk and all that, but they all are difficult.
And can I interject that I think that the grocery store level is perhaps the best level in the game as far as just physics and comedy. The grocery store level was absolutely awesome. So many tiny little objects to go flying in all directions.
Yeah, the grocery store level is also where, besides the tower of the children's play tower that you have to climb, the grocery store level is actually where I had the most problems. But I think at that point I didn't fully comprehend how to control the game too. So I was battling with myself and the game at the same time. After you leave the grocery store, you do go to the aquarium where you have to, your kids separate and you kind of go through a series of individual tasks to kind of reunite the group.
So you have to sort of make your way through some challenges that are part of the way that the aquarium is laid out. So you have to go and find your son, Tommy, and you have to go and find your daughter, Stacy, and then finally you have to go and find your wife, Scarlett. And once you've sort of reassembled your family in the aquarium, you get chased down by Chef Fujimoto, who is somehow in the aquarium, and you go through a great sequence where he attacks you, and I think somehow you end up losing your suit, and you are back in full-on octopus mode, and you get to swim around as an octopus.
Yeah, well, he tricks you. And we should also say real quick, at the end of the house stuff where you mow the lawn, you get attacked by the chef. At the end of the grocery store stuff, you get attacked by the chef.
Yeah.
So you're being attacked by the chef the entire way across, and nobody is noticing somehow. And then he finally sets up a decoy that looks like Scarlet, and you go up to Scarlet. It's a trap. He rips off your suit and throws you into the aquarium. And then he goes and kidnaps your wife and 2 kids in order to finally reveal that you are an octopus.
Really a spiteful guy.
Yeah. And there's a really... at no point would have I had said this game is like very pretty or like a really, nice looking game. It's pretty standard, but when you actually are controlling the octopus, when you're controlling him as an octopus in water, there's a shark chase scene. And it was actually really quite pretty. It was kind of interesting, the angles that you got to see it as you're kind of flying through this aquarium.
Mm-hmm. I actually thought that the graphics of the game were, you're right, they're not anything extraordinary. At most, they are really competent and they're good quality graphics without anything flashy. But it does achieve the look that I think they're going for, which is that it looks like a great cartoon.
Yeah, and I'm not discounting it. I'm just saying at no point until this aquarium scene did I ever say, like, even really think about the graphics besides the fact that they were perfectly cartoony.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked the aquarium. See, that was this odd sequence in the game for me, was the kind of aquarium chase sequence. And if there was a sequence in the game that I honestly found to be a little weaker than the rest, it was that one. Although it was very pretty, I will definitely say that. You had essentially no control through that whole segment. Like, you had one button to press. There was the scoot button.
Octoscoot.
And so you would just octoscoot your way. And I feel like if they had just given you a little bit more control, like give you that feeling, it would have been so nice to have this game lead so much up to, through having such ungainly control over this creature, right? That essentially that is literally a fish out of water the entire game, and impossible
not
to
literally a fish. An octopus
is a cephalopod, yes. But
man, I'm impressed that you had the perfect follow up to that.
but the cephalopod out of water story that this is, it would have been really nice when you get him into his natural habitat. They show it in this way, like it's portrayed this way.
Suddenly he moves really fast.
Really
but
fast.
You're right.
And
You're really just.
But by
animating
giving you
a
no
cut
control
scene.
over it.
Yeah.
Well,
What
I think you're saying is that we're kind of waiting for Octopus, a great game about being an octopus with great fluid controls and something interesting to do in the water other than run away. Actually, now that you mention it, that would be a great game. I would totally play a game about just a regular octopus. Or maybe a secret octopus that's actually a dude.
Like a man in an octopus suit.
Yeah.
And you just pretend you're not drowning. Don't let the fish spot you. These dolphins know a human when they see one.
All right, guys. Let's form our own video game company.
So getting past all of that, the game more or less concludes in the third act with you confronting Chef Fujimoto. And Chef Fujimoto chases you through a flaming cafeteria, one of the hardest sequences in the game, where you have to run entirely on the tops of tables.
I disagree. You set me up for that. I completed that in like 2 tries.
Oh, I hate you. That was the part that I spent probably about 20% of the time I spent playing this game. I spent
really?
on that level, because you have to run a sort of an obstacle course on top of a bunch of cafeteria tables that can tip over if you step wrong. And you are being pursued by Chef Fujimoto, so if he catches up to you, you're dead. And if you make a misstep and fall off of the cafeteria tables, you are falling into fire. So I found that level to be really hard, and a fitting conclusion to the game in terms of, it really tests all of the skills you've acquired throughout the game.
Yeah, it's kind of a 2-part thing. There's that part where you're running across the tops of tables where everything is on fire. And that part I actually did on my second try. The second part where it's a little bit slower, nothing is directly behind you, but you have to maneuver across like hanging scaffolding across the top. That took me much longer.
That was also pretty hard.
Whatever reason, the running across the fire, I did it on my second try. So, but it took me, 25 minutes to get through the frozen pizza freezer. So I'm not sitting on any tower here.
Yeah, and I didn't get stuck there at all. So it's probably just a matter of everybody has their own little challenges with this game.
Yeah.
What a difficult game for the developer to actually tune the difficulty of.
Mm-hmm. And that's why we were talking about a minute ago. They did tune it somewhat after the release, and I think they're continuing to do a little bit. The game initially had a lot more stealth aspects. There were some more stealth-oriented scenes that they retooled and changed the path through that level a bit in order to make that easier, based on customer feedback, because apparently a lot of people, like myself, got really stuck on that part.
It's very funny because I didn't know that, and as I played the game, I was like, they sure could have done more with the stealth elements of this game.
That's funny. If I had one real criticism of this game, it's that I wish that I had at least some control over the camera. And I'm sure that is part of it, that they wanted that element, but there were several times where I was having a really difficult time just because I couldn't properly see what I was trying to do. And if I was able to pivot the camera at all, I feel like I would have had a much better time.
That's a very valid complaint. Although, given the control scheme, they were using both sticks and essentially, both sticks, all the triggers. I don't know if there were any if there was any option for them to give you additional control
No,
over the camera on a standard
exactly.
gamepad.
And I'm sure they designed it with that in mind, like with the camera angles that you were given, you had to make do.
Mm-hmm.
But there were certainly times where I was sitting there kind of just a little unable to tell what I was doing.
Yeah,
And
camera is one
there-
of the more common complaints I've seen about the game. I didn't have very many issues with it, but I totally see what you mean.
Yeah. There were also times when in the grocery store where you're trying to get the mango soda from the flying helicopter, I was sitting here running into a wall. I was like, I'm sure this is the way to go, but the camera angle was terrible. And I was finally like, well, I don't have a good angle, a good view on this, so this must not be the right way. So I then went around the corner where I had full vision of Octodad, and that turned out to be the right way for me to go up and grab the mango soda. So I don't know if it would change the gameplay very much, but I certainly felt a little hamstrung by my inability to control the camera.
Well, hopefully the next round of consoles will have gamepads with 4 joysticks on them.
Yeah, I don't know if they could have done like you hold triangle or something,
They could
and
maybe
that
have
allows
worked.
you to pivot the camera.
Because this game really needed more modal controls. It goes between arm and leg. Now you need arm, leg, and camera.
Yeah. Oh, joy.
Well, it's arm, 2 legs, and the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so
Maybe that's what the co-op person should do, is control the camera.
any last thoughts about the game before we conclude our grand Octodad discussion?
I think I recommend you play this game.
I am certain that I recommend you play this game.
I will agree with you both, and I will go one step further and say I hope we play more silly games.
Yeah, I think too many games are too serious. This was a great, silly, fun game. And I think if this game had been much this is a great example of why I think that short games are an important subgenre, if you will. Because this is a game that I absolutely, totally enjoyed. I am not sure I would have enjoyed 15 hours of Octodad.
Absolutely. To me,
Oh god, even 4 hours of Octodad would have been
I don't
too
know.
much.
I would play another Octodad game in a heartbeat. So if they added more levels, and speaking of which, if you buy the PC version of this game, and I think there may be a similar function in the PS4 game, I'm not totally sure, but if you're buying this on Steam, then you get access to Steam's workshop, and there is a level editor for the game, and you can play additional content. There have been some really fascinating stuff put out. So if you play this game and 2 or 2.5 hours is just not enough for you, there are some really excellent little bits of extra stuff being created by the community. A few examples are, I've seen a great level where they recreated a cityscape, and Octodad was towering above the buildings and knocking over trees and whole buildings. And another great level where someone actually ported the entire first level of Super Mario 64 into the Octodad engine in an almost perfect, pixel-perfect recreation. So you can try and play through that classic first level with the terrible Octodad controls. So they're really doing some amazing stuff with that Steam workshop. Yeah. It's a game that I think has a little bit more legs to it, but than I think initially meets the eye. But it is a very short game that won't make you use this. It doesn't demand too much of your time for its silly story and its bizarre mechanics.
Yeah. I thought the game was incredibly funny, very inventive, colorful, silly. I super can appreciate humor in a video game.
Mm-hmm.
I just certainly had moments where I was so frustrated that I don't know that I was having fun. Where the silliness was lost by the fact that I couldn't get my damn leg untangled from the fence post that I was stuck on, and I just couldn't get out of it. And I know that's what they were going for, so I'm not necessarily bashing it. And like I said, I think it took me longer than it should have. I think I was missing like what the left stick does, so I think I was like kind of controlling it for a long time, a little hindered, but I really did enjoy it in hindsight. But as I was going through a lot of it, I was having a difficult time. And And after your like 8th try to get to the top of that tower, you're just like, I just want to get to the top of this tower so I can just move on.
Yeah. Well, I know that this is not a show about giving scores or assigning numbers to things. I would say that this game is a definite recommendation, and it may not be our absolute strongest recommendation, but it is a phenomenal game to pick up and enjoy that you can spend a short while with a truly original and absolutely unique gameplay mechanic and also really a charming little story. So
Absolutely.
I'd say definitely pick up and play Octodad if you can. Where can people play this game? We've already sort of addressed that, but...
Steam, obviously. Yes. PS4.
Mm-hmm.
Through Steam, it's available on all the platforms, is it
Yes,
not?
it's actually on Mac, Windows, and on Linux. So that's a big plus if you happen to be on a platform that is less served by some of the major developers, like Mac or Linux. Another place you can find this game if you're wanting to pick it up in a DRM-free form and you're not a big fan of Steam, or if you just want part of your proceeds to go to charity, the Humble Store offers the game, and sometimes at great discounts, so you can keep an eye on it there. The game costs at its regular price $14.99. It's been pretty routinely going on sale for about $9.99, but I think that they are holding firm on their price. I haven't seen it go below $9.99, and I hope that they stick with that because I know that they're a young, brand new developer. This is the indiest of the indies. This is a truly independently produced game by a bunch of brand new to the industry, young developers right out of college creating something magical. So I 100% encourage you to support them with your hard-earned dollars. Send money to these guys through any of the medium in which you can purchase this game.
Yeah, I really hope they don't starve.
Yeah. I also hope that they can afford to eat something other than ramen now that they've put out a highly successful game. Anyway, thanks a lot for joining me, guys. This has been The Short Game, another successful episode of The Short Game, our exciting podcast, and I hope you'll join us next time. Do we know what game we're covering in our next show?
Nope.
Wow, this is the first time that we've been able to say no, we don't know exactly what game we're covering. So you'll see an announcement on our blog very shortly, but we have some great ideas a-cooking. Where can people find you, Nate?
We're having a fish fry.
Yeah.
You can follow me on Twitter at NateSTL.
Awesome. And Shane, where can people find you?
They can find me on Twitter at 8BitShane.
Awesome. And you can follow me on Twitter at RayganK. I spelled that a little funny. It's RayGank. And you can follow our show on Twitter. We are at _short game. And we use the character underscore. You don't need to spell out UNDERSCORE if you don't want to. Although, if you do want to...
I think virtually everybody understood that.
Oh, man, I've been tweeting the wrong person. I assumed it was about a low score in a video game.
That's a reasonable assumption. So you can also find our absolutely awesome podcast website at theshortgame.net. We're pretty proud of it, and we're trying to make sure that we post on that website in advance so that if you're wanting to play along with us, play our video games that we're discussing in advance, you can follow the blog that's on that same site. That's also where you can go for our show notes, and we try to make sure that all of the links that we talk about in the show, as well as any other topics that we discuss, get included in those show notes if you want to go back and review something. So thanks so much for joining us, and we hope you'll join us next week on another great episode of The Short Game.
How do they know it's great if we don't even know what it's going to be about?
That's an excellent question.
Are we hitting stop?
Yeah, let's do it.
Stop.